Okay, now we're going to look at proving trig identities, and let's just do it here. Now, what you have to do is try and take one of the sides. Now, you take usually the most complicated side, and you start with it and you say, okay, let's start with the left-hand side. And you have to keep working on it until there is you've turned it into look like the right-hand side. That's what we're going to do. So here's our first step. Now you're given these two big ideas in grade 11, trig identities. One is that if you see tan x, you can rub it out and put sine x over cos x. And if you see sine squared plus cos squared of an angle, you can rub it out and put 1. Those are the big ideas. Now, just manipulating this a bit, you can subtract sine squared. That's a way of writing cos squared. And another way of writing sine squared is 1 minus cos squared. So those are all your kind of building blocks that you can use to solve problems. Now, look at this here. 1 minus sine squared. Oh, 1 minus sine squared is equal to cos squared. So I can rub it out and put cos squared. And they give you a mark for that. But cos squared means cos x times cos x. Now look at this. Cos x divided by cos x is 1. And we're just left with sine x over cos x. But sine x over cos x equals tan x. So you write that equals tan x. And that is equal to the right-hand side. Now that's the form you have to do that. And that's how it works. Now let's try a little bit of a harder question. Say you have this, tan squared minus sine squared, and you're supposed to prove that it's equal to tan squared times sine squared. That little dot means times. Well, you get a mark just by, let's start with the left-hand side. Instead of tan, you can write sine over cos. So tan squared is sine squared x over cos squared x. That's your first step. Now, the next step is something they use a lot. You're going to combine a fraction. And you're going to have trouble with this trigonometry if you don't understand how to combine fractions. And this is how you combine fractions. First, see, I made sine squared over 1, so I could do this combining a fraction. The way you put any two fractions together is you look at the denominator and you get a common denominator by multiplying 3 times 7, the bottom. So you get if you go cos squared times 1, you get your common denominator. And that's it. That's your answer. And then you take this number here, 1, and you multiply it by sine squared, just the way you would go 7 times 2, which is 14. You go 1 times sine squared. There's sine squared. And then you take the bottom here, like this 3 times 5, you go cos squared times sine squared. Now, they'd give you a mark for changing tangent to sine over cosine, and another mark for doing this fraction thing. Now it's a factoring problem. Sine squared is in both of these, so you can put it on the outside. Sine squared times 1 gives me that, sine squared, and sine squared times minus cos squared gives me this minus sine squared cos squared. Well, that's really good, because now I've got 1 minus cos squared in a bracket. And then I look over here and I go, oh, 1 minus cos squared, that's really sine squared. So I can write sine squared there. But oh, hang on, sine over cosine is tangent. So sine squared over cos squared is tan squared. And I've just turned it in. The left-hand side now looks exactly like this right-hand side. And that's how you do it. There you go.